Hey, hi, hello to my kings, queens, and in-betweens. I'm Valerie, and welcome to my channel, The Bookish Valkyrie. So today's video is being recorded in a hotel room. I am in Salt Lake City with my husband. He's about to graduate from the training program that he has been enrolled in for the last 3 months, and I'm really super excited to be getting into what the new rhythm of our life is going to be looking like. It's weird to be filming in a hotel room, but I am super glad to be here and to be at this point in the process. So all that said, let's get to the books. So this is my wrap up for the month of April. These are the physical books that I have with me, but altogether I read 12 books in April. This was also the Pages for Palestine readathon, of which 2 of the books that I am carrying into May are ones that I started during the readathon. I just haven't had a lot of time to read with my eyeballs, between having been sick last month and then the craziness with being up here and getting ready to be up here and then visiting with friends and family, and it's all been great, but it definitely does not leave a lot of time for reading with my eyes. But I did start reading Tavern by Destin Munden on audiobook, and I'm really enjoying that. It is a fantasy. So far, things are a little bit on the cozy side, and I think it might mostly be cozy, but I also know that this main character, who is an orc and also the leader of a guild that does shadowy things, and like but he also runs a tavern and he's a healer, so he's a really fun and interesting mix of archetypes all rolled into one character. And he is dealing with being seen as a certain way, like violent and angry and scary, but really he is just a sweetheart who wants to take care of his found family and will do whatever it takes to do that. I am really enjoying it, and I heard about it from somebody on TikTok, and I just love this concept of a tavern keeper who is sweet and gruff and tough, and I'm excited to be reading this. I don't know exactly if this is going to fall into any one category or if it's just going to be its own thing, and I don't know. But I'm here for the ride, and I'm thinking I'm probably gonna enjoy it. So far I am. And then the other 2 books that I am bringing in, like I said, they're from the Pages for Palestine readathon carryovers, and the only reason I haven't really been able to make a ton of headway on either of these books is because I just haven't had the time to read with my eyes. I also did another one of my infusions on the first day of my trip up here, and I had every intention of reading Squire. I was going to do a TikTok of me reading it for my infusion, like I did for my last infusion before this one. I just didn't. I like holding this in my hands was too much. I didn't have like a lap table or anything that I could put it on to read, and this is a very heavy book. Like holding it like this isn't too bad, but me with my hands in the condition that they're in, trying to hold it like this for an extended period of time, like even just that long, was a little bit achy. So that just wasn't feasible, and I ended up listening to there's a 4th book that I'm also bringing into May, and that was what I ended up listening to while I was getting my infusion, and that is Never Whistle at Night. It's an indigenous horror anthology, and it's fantastic. I am a little over halfway through it, and I'm loving it. I think I even am enjoying it more than I enjoyed out there screaming, or at the very least, very, very like neck and neck, enjoying it on the same level. If you liked Out There Screaming, you will love Never Whistle at Night. It is fantastic, and I am very much enjoying it. It is eerie. It is all kinds, all kinds of things. Like, you have so many varieties of horror in it too. So I'm kind of taking a longer time with Never Whistle at Night. One is that I started reading this before Pages for Palestine started, and I was not finished with it. So I put it on pause, did the readathon, and then picked it back up. But the other reason is I'm only listening to 2 or 3 stories at a time, so that I can really like digest what I'm hearing and really contemplate how it makes me feel. I'm just sort of sitting with them and enjoying them as I go. So I'm not plowing my way through them the way I sometimes would. But I do collections of stories and collections of poetry usually over a period of time so that I can really appreciate them. The only exception with anthologies usually being if it's all by the same author, like the Poison Eaters by Holly Black or Strange Candy by Laurel K. Hamilton, where it's all the same author, it's all the same voice, and it tends to have very similar through lines. Then I read it a lot more quickly and cohesively because there's just a continuity to it that you can't get with a multi-author anthology. So that's where I'm at with my audiobooks. And then with Squire, I am 50 pages into a graphic novel that is over 300 pages long. I honestly thought that I would blow through this, but because it is physical and my situation is all over the place with very little opportunities to sit at a table or a desk and read, it's just not getting read the way that I want it to be. So I will definitely be finishing that in May. And then the other book that I'm bringing into May is Her Night with the Duke by Diana Quincy. I am actually really loving this book. I'm picking it up to read in snatches of time where I have a moment alone to just sit and read, and they're very small snatches of time. Or as I am going to sleep, but I'm going to sleep, so I only get a page or 2 in before I'm out. And so this is a much slower go than the book deserves, but I am very much enjoying it. I'm enjoying it enough to pick it up every chance I have alone to sit and read. That is where I'm at with the books that I'm bringing into May. And now for the books that I finished reading in April. The first book that I finished reading in April was The Feastmakers by H.A. Clark. This is honestly one of my favorite reads of the year so far. This whole series just makes my heart so happy. I can't even tell you how much I love this series. Sideways Pike is an absolute fucking delight. Even though they wouldn't necessarily call themselves that, they don't like themselves near as much as they should. Definitely not near as much as I do. And I love this story so much. I love these characters. I love that things changed on a wide scale by the end of this book. The whole arc from where we start to where we finish is fantastic. And so definitely, if you have not read the Scapegracers series, if you haven't picked up this series at all, do so. If you like vengeance, if you like punishments matching the crime, if you like feisty femmes who are not going to take what the world says they deserve, but they're going to make the world how they want it to be, then this is the series for you. It is so good, and the representation in it is so good. And I don't understand how more people aren't shouting about this series. These books are so so fantastic. I'm going to keep shouting about this series and telling you that you need to pick it up. This was also a book that I started in and read most of it during the Trans Rights Readathon in March. And so the author is non-binary. The main character has a gender queer or gender questioning journey through this book, and there is a side character who also is non-binary, and it just is such a delight to read, and I really, really, really absolutely suggest that you read this. Oh, this also deals with a lot of sapphics, and the sexual identity journey is really complex, and you see that really well. These characters are teenagers and they are going through their own personal journeys regarding their sexual identities, and it is just fantastic and beautiful. And if I had this series as a teenager, my entire life would look different, I think. So that's an existential question we're not going to dig into here. We don't have the time or the brain space. So anyway, loved this book. It was 5 stars, and I absolutely will be rereading this series. The next book that I read is actually a kid's book that I picked up for my nephew and to give to him for his birthday, and that book is Grumpy Monkey by Suzanne Lang, and it is a wonderful story that depicts a monkey who everyone is going through and telling him how grumpy he is and trying to cheer him up and telling him all about his feelings, and it really does make him grumpy. It does make him angry. He's like, sometimes I'm just fine. Maybe I am grumpy. Okay. And it's one of those things where sometimes being told that you're grumpy will make you grumpy. Sometimes you're being told that you're grumpy because you are grumpy and you aren't acknowledging how you're feeling. But ultimately, it is a great kids book that helps discuss dealing with big feelings and dealing with talking about big feelings. And so I loved it. It was wonderful, and I am so happy that I got to give this to my nephew. So the next book I do have the physical copy of, but I could not for the life of me find it while I was packing, and so I don't have it here with me, and that is The Angel of Indian Lake by Stephen Graham Jones. It is the 3rd book in a trilogy that starts with My Heart is a Chainsaw, and then moves on with Don't Fear the Reaper, and then ends on this book. And it is difficult to talk about without spoilers, so I will kind of give you like a basic overview of this series and how it kind of operates without really giving you spoilers. So the first book is My Heart is a Chainsaw, and it is featuring Jade Daniels, who is a teenager whose life has been fraught with a lack of safety. And like the major coping mechanism that she has developed for dealing with her trauma and dealing with her lack of safety is that she is a major horror movie fangirl, specifically of slashers. And she kind of sees her world through that lens and sees people in her life through these archetypal stereotypes. The first book is like a fever dream of love letters to horror. It slowly reveals where all of Jade's traumas are coming from. You slowly see the people around her who are genuinely trying to help her, who have succeeded and failed to varying degrees, and it all culminates in this slasher film come to life. And so in Don't Fear the Reaper, we are 4 years later, and all of the repercussions of what happened during the events of My Heart is a Chainsaw are starting to roll out and we find ourselves in another story arc, another slasher story. And it is a lot different from My Heart is a Chainsaw, where My Heart is a Chainsaw, you are almost exclusively in Jade's head with very few exceptions. And it's a very up-close fever dream. In Don't Fear the Reaper, we pull back a bit from Jade because we're head hopping through several characters. Some characters you'll revisit, some characters you're only seeing as they are in their death scene. It's very much like watching a slasher film. And you're seeing the repercussions and tendrils of the events from the previous book making their way through this book, along with new events and new elements being introduced. And then by the end of that story, you definitely are getting the picture of Jade as somebody who has developed and changed and grown up. And then in the next story, we are another 4 years in the future, and things are very different. By the time we are in this one, Jade is now filling the shoes of one of the adults who desperately wanted to be there for her, who tried so hard, and to varying degrees of success and failure. And you are seeing her becoming the adult that she's always had the potential to be. And it's beautiful. You definitely learn new things about Jade. Jade learns new things about herself. You learn new things about her best friend. You see how everybody has changed and has been changed. And because this is the third the third installment in a slasher series, all bets are off and everyone is fair game. So there is tons of gore, tons of tragedy. There is reprisals of evils that were in the first story or maybe always there. And there are new evils, and it is kind of totally a shit show of how the fuck has this town survived, and how is there going to be anything left standing at the end. And it's so good, it's so beautiful, it's so well crafted, and I absolutely love and adored this book. I finished reading Love and Focus. It is a 3-volume manga. I read the first volume in March, and then I finished reading volumes 2 and 3 in April. And it is sweet. I think that the first volume is where I really enjoyed myself the most, because the first volume for me was a 5-star, the second volume was a 4-star, and the third volume was a 3-star. I think maybe it's because how much I really just enjoyed the main character. I just wanted to follow the main character, and I wanted to watch her be ridiculous. And I just wasn't invested in the love interests at all. They were fine, but I just didn't find them all that intriguing, and I was a little disappointed that I didn't get more of the main character being ridiculous, because she's a fucking gremlin and I love it. So anyway, that is where I am going to leave Love and Focus. And then the next book that I completed in April was At First Spite by Olivia Dade. This is another example of just how delightful her writing is. She has spunky characters who are fantastic. She has a male lead who is an absolute cinnamon roll, and yet he manages to stick his foot in it really, really good, really, really hard several times. He's slowly learning from his mistakes. He's slowly learning to identify his mistakes as mistakes. But he really truly is a cinnamon roll. he's just really good at saying exactly the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time, and really accidentally stumbling through somebody's personal landmines. The same can be said of the female main character. She also has her shining moments where she sticks her foot in it, and that is kind of part of the fun and the balance of their relationship, is that they both make mistakes, they both learned from it, and they both evolve and develop. They each have their own character arc, they each have their own storylines, but in the end, they keep coming back together and they keep finding themselves pulled together and choosing to be together, and it's beautiful, and I loved it. So I do want to put a little bit of a content warning out there regarding this book, though, because always check content warnings on your books, but this one, for me in particular, at the wrong moment could have been a hard one for me to step into. Instead, I picked it up at exactly the right moment, but it does have a very visceral and in-depth view of somebody going through a deep depression, and for me, it was very, very accurately depicted in the way that my personal depression tends to show itself. So definitely, if you have a hard time reading really descriptive depictions of depression, this may be a difficult read for you, so proceed with caution. But ultimately, this was the perfect book at the perfect time for me to read when I did. So I am absolutely recommending this, and I will definitely be continuing on in the Harlot's Bay series. And then next up is a middle grade, I want to say upper middle grade, maybe lower YA is where I would stick this so far as age range. But that is The Changeling Sea by Patricia McKillop, and I really very much enjoyed this. It was very nostalgic for me, so far as the writing style and the type of fantasy story that it was. I definitely read many books like this growing up. If you enjoyed books like Dealing with Dragons, The Enchanted Forest Chronicles, or if you enjoyed any of the old school like Bruce Coville books, if you really enjoyed any of the fantasy books that were out and about for middle grade to YA during the like 80s and 90s, I think that you will really enjoy this book, because that was definitely the nostalgic feel that it gave me. It is very fairy tale-esque, and it definitely has a hopefulness, but it also has kind of a gritty reality to it. Basically, our main character has lost her father to the sea, and he was a fisherman, and she is so angry at the sea, she decides to curse it. And as she is putting together her hexes to throw into the sea, and she's not even really convinced that she's going to succeed. This isn't a thing. This is just sort of a thing she's feeling her way through. She's not like a trained witch or anything. She's just an angry teenager, a young angry teenager who is dealing with grief in her own way, while her mother is also dealing with grief in her own way, because her mother is just in this massive depression where she has dissociated and is just not able to be there for her. And as this is a high fantasy setting, that means that our main character, as young as she is just taking care of herself on her own. She is a maid at a bar in town, or an inn in town. She's making sure her mother is eating, but she is refusing to live in the same house as her mother because it hurts too much. So she has taken up residence in this little hut that used to belong to an old woman that is the one who showed her what hexes look like. And she just is referred to as the old woman. And so she's living in the old woman's hut. The old woman just one day up and disappeared. And there are some guesses as to what happened, various guesses as to what happened, that she never returned, but you never really find out. And while she is putting together her hexes for the sea, a prince comes across her and wants to know what she's doing. And when she tells him what she's doing, he asks her to deliver a message to the sea along with her hexes. And she does that, and things get really crazy from there. And it's fantastic and a wonderful time. And I absolutely suggest that you pick this up if you are ever in the mood for a quick high fantasy that isn't a lot to get through. And then the next book that I have is one that I picked up because I couldn't resist it. But I am not, I don't know. I think this might just be an Aunt Val collection book, and that is Night Night Dino Snores. I absolutely loved it. It is a board book, and it has a little texture patch on each page, and it is just very fun in the vein of Goodnight Moon or Little Owl says goodnight, or Goodnight Little Owl. But it has those textures and the beautiful, fun pictures of all of the dinosaurs. So if you have a kid in your life that loves dinosaurs and bright colors and textures and is of the board book age, and you're wanting to introduce reading on the regular with them, I think this is a wonderful nighttime story, and I will definitely be adding this to my collection. I may gift it to a niece or a nephew down the line, but for right now, it's an Aunt Val story. The rest of the books that I completed in April were books that I was reading for the Pages for Palestine readathon. I am still continuing my support of these families who are attempting to get to safety. They still have I still have all of their links to their GoFundMes in my Linktree, which you will find on my bio for my page. It's also linked in my Linktree is also in my Instagram and in the description below. So if you are wanting to contribute to these families and support them in some way, either through content creation and sharing their links, or if you want to donate yourself, they're there for you and available for you. I am continuously adding to my Linktree the lists. There is also the master list from Operation Olive Branch, and I have that linked as well. We need to help these people get to safety. This is horrific and not anything anybody should be having to deal with. So here are the books that I read for the Pages for Palestine readathon. First up is Minor Detail by Adania Shibley. This is a book that I gave 5 stars. It was a very difficult read. It's very short, but it took me several days to get through, just because of how difficult it was to read. But I think that it is a very good depiction of the impact that this long-term occupation has had on the Palestinian peoples. Basically, it is showing you what happened to a Bedouin woman then in the second half of the book, you're following a woman who was born 25 years to the day of this other woman's death. And she is reading the newspaper, and the death itself, the rape, the subsequent punishment of the soldiers, none of it is what caught her attention, because none of it is new. All of these major details are so commonplace that none of them are what caught our main character's attention. And the thing that did catch her attention was the date, and that is 25 years to the day before she was born. And so this minor detail, this tiny little detail, is what sticks in her head about this story that she read. And it is the thing that niggles her into pursuing this woman's story. And you go through step by step with her how she goes about and how she has to go about looking into what happened with this woman, looking into finding some more details, some minor detail to make it all make sense, something. And she is going through, and she has to borrow her friend's identity card just so that she can get to the area where the museum that has the information that the author of the article she read that caught her attention in the first place, where he got his information, was this museum. And even to get to this particular area that this museum is in, she can't get there because of her identity. So she has to swap identity cards with a friend just to get into the area where she might find the information she's looking for. She goes to investigate, and it is heart-wrenching and tension-filled, and everything is written in such a simple, clear style, but there's so much complexity within that. It's just so well written, and it's hard to explain without going too far into detail, but it honestly read kind of like a horror story. I don't think that it is actually classified as a horror story, but to me it read like a horror story, and it's just a depiction of life, everyday life under occupation. If that doesn't tell you how wrong what's happening in Gaza is, I don't know what will. So definitely, out of everything that I read, this is the book that had the most impact on me. If you have any question whatsoever about what occupation looks like, read this book. It will clear up a whole lot for you. The next book I read was just because I needed something lighter, something of a palate cleanser. And so I picked up Olive Harvest in Palestine by Wafa Shami and illustrated by Shaima Faruqi. And I loved this story. It is beautifully illustrated. And look at this little girl. She's adorable. You follow a little girl and her best friend, and it gives you an idea of the community and the importance of community and culture to the Palestinian people. And it is a beautiful kid's story. I absolutely recommend it. And then the next book that I read, because it was also lighter, was Something More by Jackie Kelly. It is a book that I listened to on audio, so I don't have a physical copy of it. It is a story of a Palestinian Canadian girl growing up in Canada. She's 15 years old and going into her first year of high school, and she is also starting this first year of high school on the heels of having been diagnosed as autistic over the course of the summer. So she is having her growing up moments. She's having her development into an adult, into a young adult, happen at the same time that she is grappling with her autism diagnosis, what that means for her, how to integrate it into her identity, and how she wants to be perceived by the people around her, how she wants to tell people about who and how she is. And the whole time she is having all of the same friend and boy drama that several teenage girls have growing up. It is a very dramatic, very teen drama book, and at the same time it does such a good job depicting the familial dynamics and the cultural dynamic of having a culture that is different from so many of the people that make up your community. And so I thought that that was really well done. I very much appreciated it, and it was very good at showing the different dynamics of friendship and what friendship looks like on all of its positive and negative sides. We definitely have the toxic friendship, and we have the really positive friendships, and then we have a best friendship, and we have boy drama, and it is a very fun YA story. Definitely written for YA audiences. So if that's not a thing that, if you're an adult and that's not a thing that you have the patience for, don't read it. It's not for you, and that's okay. However, if you do enjoy reading YA that is written for a YA audience, then this will definitely be something that I would suggest you pick up. I very much enjoyed our main character's personality. Parts of her really reminded me of one of my best friends, and parts of her actually really reminded me of me. I'm not autistic, but I am neurospicy. And I really enjoyed watching the way that she maneuvered through high school life and how she maneuvered through feeling like she's growing up and getting the adults in her life and the other people in her life to treat her like she's growing up. And no one was perfect, but it all came together perfectly. So, loved it. It's a fantastic YA story, and I absolutely recommend it. And then the final book that I completed in April was actually the first book that I picked up for the Pages for Palestine readathon, but it was a collection of poetry. And while I can sometimes blow through a collection of poetry, I oftentimes will take a couple of weeks to go through, to get through to the end of a collection of poetry, and that's what I did with Blood Orange. So I continued reading it during the final days of the month, which were outside of the readathon, but it was really good and very much worth the read. I gave it 5 stars. It is by a Palestinian author who is part of the trans community, and the poetry is really beautiful and impactful. If you are trying to find it, it's pretty difficult to find in the physical format. It is not available on Kindle, I believe. I don't think, I wasn't able to find it for Kindle, but it is available on Kobo and I really enjoyed it. I purchased it there, and I am planning to find a physical copy of it eventually to add to my collection, because I very much enjoyed it, and it is very much worth the read, and I would like to be able to go through it physically and really physically sit with it and enjoy it. So those are the books that I read in April, and I have no solid plans for what I am doing for May beyond finishing up the 4 books that I am bringing with me from April into May. I did not manage to read any banned books in April, mostly because this page is for Palestine. I did have a plan to catch up on my banned book reading. So far, I have not read as many banned books as I had planned on reading, but I think maybe that will be my plan for May, is to get caught up to where I want to be on my banned book reading. And if you are also looking for banned books to read, I have a list on my Goodreads page. You are welcome to go and check that shelf out. They recently came out with the 2023 10 most banned books in America. I can link that below for you as well. And I'm really bad at wrapping things up, so I will just leave it here and see you next video. Stars shining bright above me. Night breezes seem to whisper. Dream a little dreamer. I can't tell, right? It's like, so if you liked Out There Screaming, you will love words. You will love Whistle at Night. Or if you liked Out There Screaming, you will love and my brain is not braining so well right now. So bad at this. Why do I think I can do these things?